Okay, so good morning from my side as well. It's nice to see you all again here. Together, I would say we are almost 8, 9 people in the room here. So it's of course a pity that you could not join us in Delft to enjoy the very, very nice typical Dutch weather, which is just terrible. But nevertheless, it's very, very nice that you join us through Wire. And we have 4 speakers in the lineup. Of course, we will introduce each of them just before they go into the presentation. But Edwin, you are going to present as the first. Let's start with explaining a bit who you are, what you've been doing, and what we're going to present.
Disable screen sharing.
Oh yeah, perhaps for the good order, so we will have presentations of 15 minutes each. And this gives us with something like 15 minutes for Q&A. But of course, it's always nice when you can start the chat and discussion already immediately after the presentation. So thanks for following that way. So something like 15 minutes for you, starting with explaining who you are and what you've been doing and what brings you to this presentation.
Yes, very briefly about myself. I'm Erwin Hurkens. You probably know me also from a few ERES conferences. I work for TU Delft, as you see, for the Urban Development Management section. And today I'm going to tell you something about a course that I have blended with a couple of other tutors, also with Hilde, which is a bachelor course in our program in the TU Delft. So content for today is quite, my presentation is quite hands-on introduction, challenges in blended learning, so a literature review. Then the course itself, how I blended, the evaluation of that course, and a few conclusions and recommendations. So, introduction to blended learning, just to make sure that we know what we are talking about. It's of course the blending of face-to-face and online instructional activities. It is said to create new opportunities for optimizing learning. I think yesterday we also talked about that quite a lot. And of course also the other side of the coin. It's widely adopted across especially higher education, so universities and other applied universities. It's sometimes referred to as a new traditional model or a new normal course delivery. Of course, that's always debatable, but of course we know that this is something for the future. We are currently experiencing that. And also we noticed yesterday, and that's also in the literature, that it's often part of university and faculty's education policies, looking for education innovation. So it's quite stimulated, sometimes of course also with budgets. As we saw yesterday also by TU Delft with this extension school. And the benefits include, amongst others, more effective learning, enhanced cost effectiveness, and increased flexibility for learners. So let's go to what we might call experience in practice, but what is also already being investigated and researched in the literature. So one of the challenges is incorporating flexibility. That includes that the learner has control over their own, let's say, learning path. And that can, of course, be quite difficult if you have a limited time period for a campus course. So how flexible can you organize these courses when you're on a certain time period? Another way to deal with it, inflexibility, is to enable students themselves to choose between weekly or topical participation, online and face-to-face modes. So you might think of certain themes, content-related themes they can work on, and in the end, after let's say 5 weeks, they just should have done these different themes or topics, and that makes for, let's say, an assessment. So when they do it, it's not really much of an issue. It can best be implemented by giving the students flexibility to choose these learning activities in more random order. Then the other challenge is stimulating interaction, as we all know, I think. That includes student-student and student-teacher interactions, and that can be difficult to organize, especially in the online environment, of course. You see these enlarged philosophical and communication-based issues that are called transactional distance, so some sort of social distance you're experiencing this pandemic as well. Of Of course, this can be treated by introducing face-to-face meetings, but also to a lesser degree in an online environment. We often take for granted. The educator presence is in all online learning activities paramount. That's what students say in this study. I think yesterday we had an example of this from one of the speakers, so that's why I also asked this question, because I recognize this was also done in literature. So if you do something online, maybe it's that you have the instructor there to answer questions immediately and not wait for the face-to-face setting. Then peer-to-peer online activities, individuals, let's say, instructor feedback can help to create a sense of community and improve the learner engagement. The third point, I'm going to speed up a little bit, facilitating the learning processes of students. Self-regulation, as we all know, is quite important. Students should be able to, with the tools they get and the explanation they get, to study themselves. Naturally, this comes easier for high achievers than low achievers. So I think yesterday we had this discussion on, do we take everybody on board? Sometimes we see here low achievers, the ones that maybe are not so good in concentrating or self-discipline. We might need to help them well by just instructing them well. So, conducting regular tests might help, also in an online environment, to assess if students make progress, and self-monitoring, so students being able themselves to see if they are studying well is also an important part of learning. The last one, fostering an active or interactive learning climate. We know that, of course, we have less things encounters, and that this tacit knowledge, this transfer of knowledge and ideas is quite important. So it can lead to higher dropout rates, feelings of learner isolation, reduced motivation to learn. So if we have classroom forms, it might also be a good idea that you somehow make sure that these compulsory online activities, that they are further applied and tested also in face-to-face settings. So then students know that if they do something online, in the end, they will be also addressed face-to-face setting. Now, the last thing is that MOOCs can also make traditional taught courses also subject my presentation. Let's move quickly to the course. It's a third-year course called Management and Redevelopment. Quite a traditional course. I think yesterday also Peter explained this. So it involves lectures, readings, and final exam. 5 themes, it is all well known to you. I also developed a MOOC, Managing Building Adaptation, together with the colleagues of our department. And when I did this, I also thought about potentially reusing MOOC material for this course. They're kind of on the same level. I think the MOOC is a bit of a first-year bachelor level, and this course is third-year bachelor level, but it can support each other. There's a university program called BLEEP, which helped me also to, in the end, make this blend. And the goal of this presentation is to give insight into what we have done and how well we did it. So here on the right, you see a storyboard, which was used, let's say, and you might also know these, right, the division between face-to-face and online activities, and somehow you need to design a recognizable blend or learning wave. So you see a lot of arrows and circles. That was kind of a creative idea in workshops together with university e-learner, the faculty education quality coordinator, instructors, student assistant, just to make sure that we could develop something that could be recognizable to students, structure, and of course, clear links between what they did online and face-to-face. Online, it was structured as follows: so a reading part, watching short videos, making short quizzes, and sometimes practice case stories or articles. And in the face-to-face part, we had a short recap and an introduction to the assignment, and this assignment was based on the things they've done in the mornings in the online part. And then additionally, we had a practitioner and a professor lecture to give some reflections or illustrations about what they were doing that day. Here's an example of, on the left, the MOOC environment with a video lecture on urban development policies and markets. And on the right, you see the assignment they made in class, which was also related to this content on the ski cloud block area. So, what did students say? Overall grade with a response of 15%, 0.5 low. So that was kind of low to me. It was the first time we did it, but still, I would have expected this to be a bit higher, but course, there might be a lot of explanations to this, from the student not being not aware of why you are doing these kind of courses. The grade was kind of okay. What I found interesting was that they did spend about, let's say, the time that was, let's say, 50% that they spent the time that was actually allocated for this course, which is a good thing. In the qualitative responses, she saw that they were positive in general about the course, how it's organized. They were able to self-study in this bright space environment, so that worked. They did recommend that they should, teachers should indicate the time they were expected to allocate for the online activities, which is a good thing, I think. And they want to schedule these self-study mornings in their timetable. My own evaluation points based on discussions with the police people and the faculty quality assurance team. The same, let's say, the same passing rate was achieved, about 75%, which is good. I think a good result in the end. So it's comparable to other years. In the end, I think this self-study time reduced the number of face-to-face activities, so we have less face-to-face hours to be spent and not these long lectures anymore. That might create more effective learning. I think in general was quite some student motivation. So that also came about, I think, with the face-to-face activities we did. Nevertheless, teaching note, as we all know, there was significant additional preparation time, I think, for this blended version. And if you do it once, of course, you get advantage in the long run. I am still convinced of the added value because the course became more dynamic and interesting. I think with a lot of different learning activities for specific purposes. If we compare it to literature, flexibility was often addressed as an important thing. I think here the students said, no, give me the structure. And within the structure, I can find my own flexibility. That's basically it. Stimulating interaction, I didn't do this at all in the online environment. And the student really didn't care about that. At least I didn't find any students that said we should participate or be active online together. So they really done the face-to-face part. I think we established this facilitating learning process of students, both for high and low achievers, because in the end the results were comparable to the years before. This is my benchmarking. There were potential physical distance, learner isolation issues, but these were mainly compensated by these bi-weekly face-to-face encounters, I think. So we studied together. Okay, moving to conclusions. I think the first thing is quite important, explaining to students why we are blending their learning. So to stimulate also active learning and explain what we expect from them. So what do they do online? And is that, for instance, also being addressed in the face-to-face meetings? So there should be a link between the two. If you don't do this, you get a sense of demotivation of students not learning regularly, I think. It can enrich the learning experience and improve also their own control of learning. So some students really like to be, working on these online assignments, for instance. In general, and that's more of an observation, but in a broader sense, it's an achievable way of, let's say, for theoretical courses. I'm not sure if this is a thing for design courses. Also, Peter explained yesterday. If it's quite hands-on, learning material, activities, and assessment by an exam, it's easily to be done with blended learning. These integrating, let's say, the MOOC-based learning materials can be an effective way to improve the quality. If you have good theme-based or topic-based, let's say, presentations, videos, and quizzes, this really helps students to concentrate, I think. You can apply these different videos in different campus courses. And yeah, that's what I skipped. Recommendations, just more in general. I also have some recommendations for the course, but that's not so important. Do not underestimate the amount and nature of educational tasks involved. So it takes a lot of time to make a good blend. Follow educational courses that provide the background for the do's and don'ts of blended education. So there are people out there like this extension school. They set up workshops just to understand how do you actually professionally blend the course. this really helps. And this is more of a call for everybody, I think. Read the vast amount of literature on blended online hybrid learning and teaching, because the things we already recognize now in practice, right? All other people also experience this, so they wrote about it and they try to prevent us from making all these mistakes or replicating the same mistakes they have done before. So this really helped me, at least. For the faculty, carefully assess and choose receptive campus courses. As we've seen, that the social interaction by both the students and teachers is very much valued, and I think we need that to improve the quality level of education and to reach this higher order academic learning, and that cannot be replicated in online environment, not to the same extent. So this blend is a good idea, but you should carefully watch for the type of courses where you do this. So predefined plan and a strategy of also making, for instance, MOOC material, integrating this in a course is also important matter when you start making these courses. That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Well, take the time and that was, I think, an interesting question just for a good understanding of what type of course it is. What was the number of students you had in your course?
There's two cohorts. So the first is about 120, and the second is about 300.
120 and 300. Yeah. And how much percentage of the time was used face-to-face, and how much percentage of their time that is supposed to be?
I think 50-50.
50. Okay. And Jana, I think we will, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but the slides will be made available. This is quite traditional in our meetings. So thanks for these suggestions and questions. We move on. Bob sitting next to me here. Bob, perhaps indeed, could you also start with introducing yourself a bit and trying to keep the time as good as Erin did. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Herman. I will do so certainly. Also, a very good morning from my side. I was born in the Netherlands, here in the flatland, acquainted with let's say the weather conditions. I'm based in Austria since a couple of decades, not a flatland. It's always going up and down somehow. I've been responsible for real estate courses since nearly 2 decades, and I'm in a function that I'm able and capable to change things. So in this regard, the education seminar is very valuable. Overall, I would see blended learning not as a what was happening. No, oh, my goodness, I'm going to demonstrate my.
But just take your time. So
yes,
just to reset your.
Okay, this is also a good test. It's not scripted. It's here we go. Okay, I'm going to get it in again. I was attempting to say that blended learning is not a switch, either 0% or 100%. I would see it as a slider, and depending on the type of coursework, the slider is going more to the left or to the right. However, I think, and that's to say the common denominator between us, it is all about learning and the progress of our students. And it's not enough to say, well, as long as everybody or a certain portion is completing his studies in an adequate time, it doesn't bother. It does.
Sorry, Bob, you are muted.
No, Bob is speaking by the other one. So Bob is muted indeed himself by the camera.
Are you not here, Bob?
Yes.
No.
Let me show you the sound. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so then you should hear Bob as well because he's sitting next to me. So
I can.
We continue like
We can hear Bob.
Okay, you can hear me.
Now we can.
And now you can. Okay, perfect. Well, because I think it's of crucial importance to being heard. I've been setting up this short presentation in a few bullet points. Blended learning, even before COVID, was a topic already for us. We've been presenting in 2015 at the Education Seminar. We were very much engaged in virtual learning environments, took on blended learning, and eventually in 2019 we were presenting a course which was taking place in this mode because the lecturer simply wasn't due to children's care, not able to take part at presence teaching. And it was a very valuable experience also because the person in charge was very much able and willing to take here some experiences. Many things have been said, and there's a danger of potential duplication. Aaron just said, read the literature, and he is fully right, because why to start with trial and error and to see what is coming out? What I can take from our experience in the past 1.5 years is that we were trying to avoid any interruption in teaching because we wanted to progress with this. And likewise, everybody more or less had to do this overnight, and that made it much more difficult in the end. So my screen is somehow too small. It seems that as if I would never have been doing this, which is not the case. Let me see if I can get rid of this. Yeah, this is much better for me at least, so that I can see what I'm doing. Yes, and overall we thought that there is simply no alternative. We could have said, well, let's delay teaching and come back in the semester. But who was able to know how long this will take? Also to move to self-learning and say, well, do it yourself. That is not an option at all. So some observations. How effective is the technology? That is what we can see by many presentations which have been already. Are we connected or are we not? Are we engaged or are we not engaged? Or is it something like a channel in the background from everything a bit and nothing real? And in the end, that is what we are aiming at in our courses, is that there is a high degree of interaction between the students, but also between the students and the lecturers. This is one of the common definitions. What is it actually blended learning? It is a combination of face-to-face interaction on one side and the technology mediated part on the other side. But there is not just one common definition. Also, I think there's a variety of delivery. This image is also very well known, taking care of several different aspects. We have been showing it already a few times. Are you in the classroom, or is your delivery computer mediated? How are you going to mediate these parts, or are you shadowing? And last but not least, the type of instruction. And I think that is something which will take more attention in the future. Let's go a bit back in the past. How long is this all around? Maybe 30 to 40 years ago, we were working with conference calls. It looks a bit like landing on the moon and this kind of things, but overall, we were very happy that this was available. It was asking for really an elaborate level of discipline. Otherwise, you could not understand anything. In the mid-90s, we were very proud to have Silicon Graphics in the EDP center, had to free the data highway only for us. And we were making a connection with our rector who was staying in Brussels. And It felt like the Apollo was landing on the moon and we couldn't hear hardly anything, neither see, but in those days it was maybe more the fascination and less what we were able to do with it. And then Skype came, very easy, peer-to-peer. First a voice, was also a bit of a play to overrule the business models of the telecommunication companies. Then multiple participants came. I think at a certain point, even then, it never worked very well in the end. And then screen sharing. Well, it's so common nowadays, but at once we were able, not so to say, to sit next to each other. Well, I can see now the screen from heaven, who's sitting next to me. But that was some kind of milestone, but Skype did not really evolve. And then at once, I'm very sure that if I would ask everybody here in the room and also in the virtual room, who had heard about Zoom in 2019? Probably nobody did. Even some people invested in the wrong shares in 2020, or companies were named Zoom. A person knew French software in around 2000 for modeling, but that was for computer-aided design. And I think what we all experienced is a very steep learning curve. We were experimenting, we were trying to achieve, so to say, results. We were mimicking things like breakout rooms, and in the end, those software packages who were intuitive, even if they were bashed, but they were simply giving us the chance to do it. They made it in the end. And you can see at the bottom, we started to play with backgrounds and all these funny things. And if you could see yourself in somewhere on the Bahamas, well, I'm still. Herman is saying I have 5 minutes, so I have to speed up. Okay, I will do so. Right. Our context is not the one of 120 to 300 students. We are working with small cohorts, 15 to 30 students. It tends to be more 30. People who are working in practice, they come to us Friday evening on Saturday, fixed course schedules. That's what also Erwin is saying. Make a structure and then people will find a way. It is tuition driven, so it's not a state who is financing this. We have to attract the people. Now, what was happening? Our students, as we did, simply jumped in. Interestingly, and I think that has also been said a couple of times, we were so happy to see 100% log in. Everybody is there, but some people never log out, and that will be the same at this education seminar. Gunther will tell me afterwards. Some tricky parts. My bandwidth is not working. I switch off my camera. As a lecturer, you're talking into the black screen, which is not very satisfying. So I'm not sure what participation really means and how active you are. At least the discussions we were used to, they were very cut off, and only a few were participating in the end. We were also working with online exams. Yes, there is an opportunity for cheating, but you can cheat always in life. So we partly used two-camera technology, and I think very positive is the feature that we had to shift as much as possible towards open book. So not only reproducing things in some parts that is important, but not always. And I see a clear shift for some courses. This is working very well. For example, for the building technology courses, we are still in presence. Some conclusions, because also the time is lacking here. I am convinced that blended learning will not leave our all-daily university life. It will grow to points where it is useful and in importance, but we cannot simply take our previous formats, and I think there is some progress and development and some modification needed. Some courses will do very well, like for example statistics. Everyone is seeing the screen, you have a good position in the space. just take part. I think the very first sense is insofar also important, taking the context of executive education. People are expecting everything now. It should be in presence, it should be hybrid, it should be streamed, it should be recorded. So once you have had this, and it is indeed easy, but I think that also has an, so to say, a limitation in time. So overall, I'm sticking to my general conclusion from 2019. It is fine, but not for the whole course problem. We want substantial moments to have the people together. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And indeed, Francois said that he sometimes feels like a radio presenter. And sharing my own experience about that is that indeed, when we were in the full COVID lockdown, I made it a bit like a radio show, and I did interruptions every 10-15 minutes with some music. That the students could choose. It was played from playlist. So just to give you an idea that indeed we had this feeling of a radio presenter. So
very important to activate.
Exactly. So, but about activating, I'm going to activate my screen as well, because I can give you guys to see you a little bit more close, perhaps. Okay, flying through wire to the totally opposite side of the world. We couldn't be more like on the other side than in Melbourne, where Kalin is joining us. Kalin, are you?
Can you hear me?
There you are. Splendid.
Okay.
Maybe you could start with sharing your screen with us.
Can you see my screen?
Now we see it perfectly. It's unbelievable. You speaking from the evening. I think it's something like 7 o'clock in the evening with you there.
Sorry?
It's something like 7 o'clock in the evening with you in Melbourne, I guess.
Can you repeat again? Sorry, there is some echo sound in my earphone. Sorry about that.
Strange, but let's say that it's evening now at your place.
Yes, it's evening.
Okay, so the floor is yours, Karin. Yeah, 15 minutes for your presentation.
Okay, so I would like to ask, so you can see my share screen?
We can. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I think there's, okay. Yes, sorry about that. So good morning, everyone. So I am Kalin Jen, and I'm from the University of Melbourne, Australia. Today, I'm happy to be here to present my paper, which is the use of blended synchronous learning in higher education in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So here is the overview of today's presentation. First, I would like to introduce the background of this paper, and then a brief literature review on blended synchronous learning, and then an introduction of the case, which is the University of Melbourne and its implementation of BSL, and then present an analysis with some concluding remarks. So, the outbreak of COVID-19 has brought serious disruption worldwide, and higher education sector has been at the forefront of this global pandemic. After the outbreak of the pandemic since March 2020, it had caused the closure of universities and schools that affect 1.6 billion enrolled learners across the world. And among these countries, 2/3 of higher education institutions reported that they have shifted from classroom teaching to online teaching and learning. So with the rollout of national vaccination program across the world, higher education institutions begin to recommence on-campus learning, bringing new hopes towards a more normal way of life. In this regard, we need innovative response to adapt to the new normal, and blended synchronous learning, which hereafter refer to BSL, emerged as a panacea to adjust the current rapidly changing situation. So this paper aims to explore the roles and values of BSL during and beyond the pandemic, and examine students' learning experience regarding the BSL enhanced subject delivery in property education. In recent years, BSL has been increasingly employed in higher education sector with a growing body of literature on this new emerging pedagogical approach. So some literature has described it interchangeably as multi-access learning, single model classes, hybrid flexible course design to highlight its multi-modality character. And BSL encompass several basic elements as illustrated in the diagram, including the physical classroom, the cyber classroom, and teachers, students, and numbers of classrooms or participants, with the assistance of rich media synchronous technologies. BSL then enables the integration of face-to-face class with online synchronous session where online students can attend face-to-face classes simultaneously so that learning environments are equitable and similar to both cohorts of online and campus students. So among the literature, there is a general consensus on the pedagogical benefits of BSL. First and foremost, the BSL's flexibility provides students with greater access to educational opportunities. Regardless of students' geographical location, BSL enables students to virtually attend the class in real time that enables them equitable experience as campus students. It also facilitates class interaction that enhance their learning experience with a sense of community. And studies find that the education attainments of both campus and online students are similar. And from the institutional perspective, it can expand the student cohort so university can earn more tuition fee from the students. And also, in particular, what we experience currently is that we can continue teaching instruction during the pandemic or catastrophic events. However, there are some challenges to implement BSL. Previous studies have pointed out technological issues has hindered a smooth implementation of BSL, such as poor audio transmission and interrupt internet connection. Teachers are overloaded as they have to manage both physical and virtual classroom at the same time during the class. So sometimes they have to become the facilitator and also as teacher to deliver instructions. And studies also report there is little interaction between the student cohorts, such as online students feel isolated during the class discussion. And so this paper will illustrate the attempts of the University of Melbourne and how they address these issues. So another perspective is the significance of BSL to be implemented in property and built environment education. Property and built environment subjects are different from other academic areas as it is designed as a high industry focused teaching structure targeting specific skills to meet the demand of the industry. It requires fluidity in learning styles from theoretical knowledge to practical knowledge to fulfill specific pedagogical needs for building students' professional competence. And also there is a lack of research on the BSL application in property education. So, so facing the challenge of the pandemics, it is important to examine the application of BSL to serve as part of the solution in property education to adapt the new normal in the post-pandemic world. In this paper, we employ the analytical lens of a conceptual framework called diagram, which consists of a triad of delivery, interaction, and assessment as three interrelated tasks to deliver subject content, to support interaction between students and teaching staff, and to effectively assess online. So under a perfect coordination, they can achieve objective of learning engagement and develop students' sense of belonging. So this paper examines whether the delivery, interaction, and assessment activities in the BSL mode can enhance teaching social cognitive presence for a which are the prerequisites to a successful and quality education experience. So this paper re-examines the BSL practice in the University of Melbourne. Since March
Colin, do you still hear us? Are you in connection with us? Do we have contact with the world outside? Margareta, do you hear us?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, you hear us. Okay, then we lost Colin.
Yeah.
Maybe she will reconnect in a second. I'm just trying to wait for a few seconds, few more seconds. Okay, apparently she's not coming in again.
Maybe they switch off the internet in Melbourne in the evening.
Yeah, perhaps they go to bed at 7 o'clock. What could be? But okay, all right. No, this is not what we expected to happen. So perhaps Ellen, you could prepare for your lecture already a bit while we wait another half a minute or so.
Sorry, I apologize.
Okay,
Sorry, can you hear me? Sorry, there was an interruption and sorry.
Don't worry, just
Can I resume my presentation?
Of course you can. So you just
Okay, so is that at the slide that I was talking about the case of University of Melbourne?
Yes.
Yes, I got it.
Oh, okay, that's great. Sorry, I apologize again.
No, just full screen, just coming before you continue to the full screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So there is a BSL pilot scheme implemented before the semester. So two postgraduate property subjects were assigned under the BSL pilot scheme. So here we go through some initial planning and design for BSL enhanced subject in the University of Melbourne. So first of all, it creates a supportive BSL environment with an upgrade of in-room technologies and facilities. There are 18 classrooms being set up with BSL capacity. So a new touch control panel was installed to connect the in-room technologies, including the web conferencing system, the Latin computer, and also upgrade the visual and audio equipment. So the microphone the sound of the microphone can be transmitted directly to the Zoom meeting. And there are two in-venue cameras that enables online students to observe and interact with the class in real time. So this is the control panel, and it can adjust. It can control the in-venue camera, so to capture what happened in the classroom. And so BSL classes are conducted via Zoom, and the web conferencing tool is connected with the in-class technology to better capture what happens in the class. And also the university introduced courses labeled as BSL live stream section. That's classes having both live stream and recording of the lecture as the dual outputs available to students. And there are also administrative supports. For instance, a series of BSL training workshops and room inductions for teaching staff to get familiar with what exactly BSL and how it works. And there is funding for hiring a teaching assistant to reduce the workload of the lecturers. To make a remark here, because of the Delta outbreak, so the BSL project was then suspended to another semester. So here we go to the analysis of whether BSL can enhance a quality education experience in property education during the pandemic using the previous DIA framework. Given the time constraint, it will just briefly discuss, and we can talk about it more during the Q&A session. So first, for delivery activities, the curriculum design of property subject has its specific learning styles from lecture to studio-based modules. Given the current pandemic situation, BSL facilitates subject instruction and deliver specific skills through practical demonstration, virtual site visit to build students' professional competence. In this regard, BSL enhances responsible and effective teaching presence and leadership. And also the presence of industry professionals is crucial to provide up-to-date knowledge and share their valuable experience with students. BSL can support synchronous communication between speakers and students to proceed critical discussion and collaborative engagement that enhance social and cognitive presence. For interactive activities, in property education, the development of students' professional knowledge requires collaborative experience with students and professional industry-specific communities. Such as group discussion, student project presentation, and workshop activities. Combining face-to-face action and synchronous cyber classroom, BSL can facilitate interactive communication for strong student teacher practitioner interaction that encourage creativity in place. And this engagement in group activities and discussion can enhance social and cognitive presence through real-time educational interaction and collaborative activities. And finally, for assessment activities, with campus and synchronous hybrid classrooms, BSL provides more assessment opportunities to facilitate feedback efficiency. It supports the group work in studio project and also for students presentation and in-class debates. Through BSL, the teacher's presence is enhanced to facilitate group discussion between both campus and online students and to give instant feedback to them. And also in studio teaching, group work is important to create a vibrant learning environment to build social capital that students can learn from each other. And also BSL can enable the involvement of industry practitioners to give real-time review on students' project submission. And that can enhance their critical skills development. So to conclude, this paper examines the potential of BSL as a pedagogical delivery mode to achieve quality learning outcomes in property education in the post-pandemic world. There are several observations that can be concluded. First, the provision of adequate resources for is important for a successful implementation of BSL, as shown from the case of University of Melbourne, that it creates a supportive BSL environment with an upgrade of physical teaching facilities and staff support. And second, given the flexibility of BSL, it is projected that BSL may be able to become a prominent delivery mode for the post-pandemic new norm. But however, its prospects may depend on the states of domestic and international population mobility and the progress of vaccination program. While this paper focuses on BSL application in property education, it also sheds light on the potential of BSL to enhance student learning experience in subjects with specific needs in a post-pandemic world. So the next step of this project is to gather empirical data from the perspective of teachers and students. And for future research, there may be a cross-country comparison to analyze the implementation of BSL in different countries and contexts. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. And I apologize again for the interruption of my internet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colin. Things happen, that is very well presented, very interesting also. So for those who joined us or live, the room is more filled already here in Delft, and for those who joined us virtually, so we keep questions till the end. So that means that we will go immediately now to Ellen's presentation. Ellen is there already, I see. Ellen, you know the trick. We have been doing online learning for years now. So could you share your screen and leave us your presentation. Perhaps first introduce yourself with a few sentences. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Herman. Always want to check briefly whether you see my presentation in presentation mode or the other way around.
It's fully clear.
You see it? Clear. Okay. Yes, thank you very much for this. I will be presenting an example from the TU Delft, where because I joined management in the built environment department a bit more than a year ago now already. And I'm going to share an experience from how we've been blending a part of the building economics course, which is an example then from blending a real estate finance course. I will be doing that this morning together with the two teaching assistants who also worked on this course together with me. And they're actually also, I guess I could call it alumni from the predecessors of the course. So they also had some very hands-on experience in the delivery of the older version of the course, which I think has been very instrumental also in developing this newly designed course. So Giancarlo Carini and Tessa van Tienhoven, they're also there with you in Delft, another part of town at the moment. But the three of us will share this experience today of this course. At the moment, this course is still happening. It's programmed around a period of 6 weeks. We're starting week 5 tomorrow. So in that sense, there's also in terms of evaluation, this course, we also don't have all the information yet. And we currently have about 80 master students enrolled in this course. And I think what's maybe important to highlight because this definition of blending, it's sometimes also defined in different ways. For us, the focus on the application of blended learning was really the mix of online and technology to mix that with on-campus education then. So what were the starting points for blending this building economics course? Well, first of all, it was also a revision in the curriculum. We had 2 old courses that were smaller courses, and we had to build a new 5 ECTS course. And in particular, in some of the elements of the course, of the old courses, we felt that there was a very large variation in prior knowledge. So some students in particular, when it comes to finance, they actually had a lot of experience already of that in the bachelor, and they probably needed less learning or different learning than those who were quite new still to real estate finance. So it was really the intention also to blend this whole learning to allow much more for personalized learning, so that by making use of these blended and online materials in particular, students can really design their own each individualized learning track. Also, especially in the real estate finance, we do focus quite a lot on our course on calculation, and that and learning how to do proper calculations is also a lot about practice. And one student may need 1 or 2 assignments to practice, another one needs to repeat it 10 times to really develop these skills. So that was also one of the reasons to look into this blended learning. But still to also enable the peer learning, because if also there's something we know, it's that students in particular in their practicing skills, they also really learn a lot from each other. So in addition to making materials available, it was also always about stimulating the peer learning. And then there was also an element in it that from sort of instructional learning that we had to do a lot of that we wanted to rebalance the time input of the lecturers. What we obviously already, I think, has been discussed also here, what we know from blended learning, there's quite actually a vast amount of time input from the start. So when you develop this, it actually costs you a lot of extra time. But then hopefully in years to come with this subject, which is to a certain extent a bit more static, especially the calculation skills, we can then also gain some time. What we also very much realize, and I think this has also been mentioned already before, you can read a lot about it, but it also requires a lot of technical skills, technical insights from both the students and the lecturers. And I think at this point, I think it's sometimes even the lecturers, at least also me, I feel I've had more of a sort of a learning curve to make even here sometimes than students have, because I think generally they're often actually much more competent already with using technology. But in addition to reading a lot about how it has been done before, what are also the things to look into when you design a blended learning course, for me, it was also been very useful to talk, for instance, to the blended learning advisor at the university, and the teaching assistants that have been involved actually in already developing a lot of these courses, and also really look into programs that have been developed before by other colleagues. So learning also really from the practice, in addition to obviously reading also very well. And I think the fact that we also had these teaching assistants involved in this course has been very useful, because it gives us immediately also insight in the student perspective. So what we do with this course, how did we take on the blending process? In a way, I took the classical constructive alignment. We started by looking at the learning objectives first, and then really to identify what learning objectives would blend itself best for what kind of blending. There were elements of what we call the economics course, and we felt that that was such a dynamic subject in which we really want the live interaction. So that is still run as a sort of old-fashioned on-campus course. But in the individual preparation, there may be some videos made available, but it's pretty much an old school sort of online environment. The same was with what we call a financialization workshop. For that, we want students to work in group. We need a live environment. We have a debate. So that's done pretty much old school. But in particular, when it came to the finance learning objectives, we felt this is where an online, this individualized personal path would really be the answer. And I think one thing that we sort of tried to do with that, to allow also for these personalized education paths, was to almost bring this element as a sort of a guided education on demand. And that, I think, has also already been pointed out. There's a pitfall to that. Students, on the one hand, they're very happy about having this education on demand structure, being able to plan it when they want. At the same time, you also need to help them with structuring it. So we've also very much structured the course in terms of the timeline. Which is also the 3 different elements of the course here. They've also been structured sort of not always running in parallel. But let me talk you through the next step then. So we then moved from what are the learning objectives to what are the assessment methods we did. And we actually last year, actually because of COVID, we had to work with an off-campus, so a home computer exam. But there were a lot of issues with that. So we decided to actually make an on-campus computer exam. It's done in a secured environment. And it's also therefore a very non-disruptive environment for students to make this examen, which was one of the main reasons to not do it online. And starting from that on-campus exam, we then really designed also the learning materials, or the way to develop the course in practice, so how to implement the course. So what we made, we started off with making knowledge videos online, and we tailor-made those tailor-made the videos actually for this course. We did look for existing materials, but we in the end decided to make our own video materials. We also provide the option to indicate further reading for students to investigate further if they need that. Then we make a lot of practice materials available online. And in addition to those practice materials, we also decided on a graded assignment. And all these materials, they're provided on a week release, with also a graded assignment really on a week release. And this was an important element to introduce, because procrastination of students in these self-learning and these education on demand courses was a serious concern which we wanted to address. Since we have quite a large group, we also decided to add a peer review of this graded assignment. And then this peer review graded assignment will eventually can get students a bonus point towards the on-campus computer exam. So it is a formative, it's a summative assessment, but it is in the form of a bonus point, because students self-grade themselves or self-grade a peer student, another student. And then basically for 5 weeks, we keep up this cycle. And then in week 6, we have this on-campus exam. And as I already said, we, in this case, developed all the materials ourselves for this course, but we are still looking at particular sort of expansive information to see what is also available there online that we can still add to that. Then I would like to give the floor to Giancarlo to explain us a little bit more about the learning materials and how we did that.
Thank you very much, Ellen. Well, when it comes to the third step on designing this blended course, we decided to address the requirement for learning materials. To do this, we collaborated with the blended development department, TU Delft, and we focused on two main categories: online materials and, of course, on-campus or face-to-face materials. For the first category, online materials, the first component were these short clips or knowledge videos, which were based on scripts and would give the students like a general understanding of the main concepts and theoretical information for them to perform these exercises. In second place, there was the practice assignments, were both normal practice assignments with templates and answer sheets, but also these peer-graded assignments that we mentioned before. For those, in addition to the template and the answer sheets, you would also need a grading rubric and a general guideline to tell students how to peer review each other, as this is part of the, like, there needs to be a thorough methodology when assessing other students. These assignments were given in weekly basis, following the general structure of the course, but also allowing students for flexibility within their own time to follow the schedule of the course. The third component was further readings and extra videos. The main objective those was to level up the general knowledge of students, or they had different backgrounds, and some of them were more or less curious about the topic, so in that sense they could either align with the others or just go deeper in their understanding. For the on-campus material, first thing was to make sure that there were physical facilities available for students at a specific point on the week for them to perform this collaborative learning, to solve together the exercises and assignments that were asked to solve, and to check on the feedbacks from the peer-graded assignments. Second of all, there was these walking Q&A sessions, which were performed once per week as well, with 3 tutors on campus. This last component was quite important for us. We would like to emphasize on the main insights that these Q&A sessions gave us. First of all, of course, we could address the doubts from students, and that was the main goal. But then we could also assess the motivation of the students and evaluate based on the attendance rate, how committed students were to the course, as we thought that usually when students attend to the Q&A session, it was mostly not related to big gap, knowledge gaps. It was more about people who were highly committed and motivated to perform the course. In second place, this worked as a space for us to get assessment on the feedback that we were providing through these peer-graded assignments. We would get direct feedback from them on how self-explanatory the feedback we were providing was. Third point, we could reflect on the peer grading methodology. Is it clear for students how our guidelines working? Where can we improve for them to have a fair evaluation in this peer grading process? And last but not least, this helped us to evaluate the alignment between the blended content and the learning process of students. Where are their main lacks? Let's say, is it a skill lack? Is it a technical skill? Or is it on the knowledge concept? Yeah, well, now Tessa will share with us some of our experiences with the technology implementation and learning management systems.
We just asked you trying to go.
Yes.
Care a bit about the time.
Yeah. So the technology blend is of course important in order to blend the on-campus with the online self-study. For this, we had a learning management LMS Brightspace together with the tool Feedback Fruits, which enables, which can be implemented in Brightspace for peer review between students. So in Brightspace, there was place for the to enable collaborative self-study, and that through that the students could peer review each other for bonus points, and that would yeah, further stimulate to learn together and discuss it, so that it works together. So the peer graded assignments are also an excellent preparation for the exam, because the assignments are set up in the same way and are also graded in the same way. This way it stimulates them to make them and be good prepared. So like I said, this is enabled by the combination of Brightspace and feedback fruits. There were some hiccups during the course which you had to change between the peer review assignments, but like Giancarlo said, during the Q&A sessions, we could also get the feedback from the students, what worked well and what didn't work well. Our experience so far, mainly with Brightspace, it's a good place to share the materials, which we also make use of. There's also an option for tests and quizzes and to track the students. We didn't choose to make use of that at this moment. Maybe later on it could be added. Like I said, by using the feedback tool, we enabled peer assignment submissions. The main downside about it was because it's about finance calculations, students made them in Excel, and it's at the moment not possible to give direct feedback on an Excel file. Students have to download the file and then add the feedback in peer fruit feed in the peer review tool separate. Yeah, and finally, Brightspace itself is a good communication tool, I think, for the students, because it's all in one place. There's always, of course, a problem if students don't check the email or Brightspace, but I think that's with every communication tool. Yes, I give the floor back to Alan.
And I'll wrap up very quickly. I think I just want to say in 1 minute, less than a minute, what were the main lessons learned. We developed our own materials, and I think if you develop your own video tutorials, test a version first. Allow for collaborative space also for students to also physically be able to meet. Make rewards along the way so that students really keep up with the work and that they don't get behind. Work with, choose a learning management system, in our case Brightspace, but also when you find the limits to the system, look hard for another one, because technology should be enabling here. And for really the application of certain knowledge, you really need to very well use your live moments for that. And with that, I'll wrap it up for you, Herman.
Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting, eh? Or what you do and how you experience and how you feedback from live course, because this course is running actually. So thanks for doing that. Gives us something like a 10 minutes time to go into questions. So we had Erwin telling us from a bachelor experience. We had Bob explaining us about to blend or not to blend. Carleen introduced Daya to experience how it can become a good experience with students, and Ellen from this live session that is going on now. Well, questions, please take the floor. We had a few already in the chat, but let's hear your voices first.
I have one burning question to Giancarlo. Why would you only solve doubts from highly motivated students? What is with the other ones? Is it not worth to focus on them?
It's an absolutely relevant question. What we meant by highly motivated students is not saying we're only motivating highly motivated students. We're saying usually highly motivated students come to the Q&A session. And that's also part of our reflection, like how do we motivate more students to be part of this Q&A session, where we actually can share this space with them.
Okay, thank you. Another question from your audience.
maybe a question to Melbourne. Why are you working so excessively with the acronym BSL? It sounds like a disease. Why not just saying blended learning? Isn't that good enough?
Coming about the term you use, what do you think? Coming, do you hear us? Okay. Apparently, well, we keep the question for later then.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob.
Is anyone here?
Sorry,
I'm not sure. I think there's an.
oh yeah, Annette coming in. Yes, Annette and François. You needed Annette first?
Yes, hi. I take it you can hear me. Thank you very much for the presentation. And yeah, it was nice to see how this worked. The question I have is, how labor intensive is this? I mean, with the three of you continuously involved in making, I mean, is this a full-time job for three people? You know, it's this issue of, you know, the lecturer used to get up and go and give a lecture. Now we end up with entire teams involved with the delivery. I'm just trying to get a bit of a sense of the resources that we need to deal with.
Perhaps, Erin, this is a question for you first. So you have a team as well.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between the courses already running, which are going to blend. And it's easier because you have learning material, you have learning objective, you've got all that stuff, but you just need to make this more for, say, blended environment. And I think in the sense of Ellen, it's just starting a course from zero, and then you might need a bigger team to think out all of these elements, right? All these three elements, and then designing a course, which takes much more time, I think, than starting with one. But just for your reference, the book I built together with, let's say, a student assistant that was from scratch, took me 500 hours. So in a year, that's half of my time, and the student assistant, so from zero. And then a couple of other instructors, which all spent at least 100 hours, I think, with both preparations and running this book. That was a one-time, let's say, effort, and I was running online without much instruction, actually, just monitoring and also answering questions. So that's completely different, again, design of the course than the blended one, more on campus and online. So it takes a lot of time. If you do it for the long run, and make sure you make videos, for instance, that can be used in a lot of different settings. I think they do this as well in the economic course, and it pays off in a way. But you should have that time and also the resources financially. I would support, for instance, for the MOOC with a grant to make that possible, and still, of course, in the end, time is, it's not a feasible case in a way. So that might not be the main important argument as well. You do it for the improvement of the quality of education.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And I suppose what was linked to that, but I'll come back to it later, is I just feel that there's a lot more emails going down, a lot more messages. Now you could say that's positive because it means we have more interaction, but it also means that you wake up in the morning with 30 emails because people have studied overnight, you know.
Perhaps a short
anyway.
You were saying, yeah, I have the same experience.
I think Ellen should take this one on the amount of emails that students.
Yeah, I would love to comment to this because I think this was very much a trap to me, with this online, and this is also this education on demand thinking of students, is that I also felt like, because especially now we're running it the first time, I have to be available the whole week. But I've realized that there's a couple of small questions that you can address immediately, and I do address them immediately. But in particular, where you really need to sit down and look into things or get back to students and take your time, I also very much have started to communicate now to students. Tuesday afternoon is when we have Q&A, and that's when also any emails that come in like that need a bit more time, I'll do those also on Tuesday afternoon, because I think that's really a trap for us as lecturers. That you also feel that you need to be the whole time available. And that's something I think we should prevent indeed from being, having that But sometimes it's a question of, okay, the system was unintentionally locked, some information is not open, then of course you fix that immediately. But it's a real concern I share with you, Francois, yeah.
And one of the techniques that we see using more and more throughout faculty and universities, that we have this type of functional mailboxes that can be accessed by students by sending a mail to the course, not to the tutors, so that more people can read them and they don't feel like in your mailbox. So Annette, you have a question yourself as well?
Yes, one of my questions I put in the chat, it's about the peer review, but listening to the discussion we just had and something from yesterday, I think really we need to come back more to the peer group learning and learning groups that had been, I mean, when we studied, most of us probably, there was not the internet yet, and we had peer groups for learning. We had learning groups. And we did not pose questions to any professor or whatever. There were seminars with tutors where we could ask questions like once a week when we went there. And otherwise we had learning groups. And in the last week, I asked my first semesters, how many of you are already in learning groups? And it's so easy with the breakout rooms. They don't even have to meet physically. They can put time on that, like a time schedule, say like every week, from Wednesday 2 to 4, we are meeting in our breakout group room, and we are doing our assignments, and we are talking to each other if we have questions. And I think we have to much more give this idea back to the students, also for their socializing, for getting to know themselves and so on, and to taking pressure from us. But my question was like this. Also the grading, and we heard that the feedback is so important on the assignments, and it's impossible for a normal lecture with no team to give all these feedback on all the assignments. And so I was really listening to the peer review, and I tried it once, and it was also time intensive, but it did not work out too well. And so my question to Ellen and her team would be, how did you set it up? I heard you used the learning system. I did it with Moodle that time. But how did you set it up? How did you instruct the peers? What were the difficulties and how did you deal with them?
Okay, short answer.
Yeah, thanks, Annette. I think what helps here is that this is a real estate finance course, and the assignments we're talking about here are hardcore calculations, which have a yes, not a yes or a no answer, but have a, you know, it's 10,002 euros or it's wrong. And so I think that helps. So also we really have an elaborated answer sheet in which the correct answers are not only given, but also explained. So I think it helps indeed, and in that sense, it's a very objective type of work we have. And I think if you have a more essay style questions, it would be very difficult to include that. What I think also helped was that the students also helped, the student assistants in this case, Giancarlo and Tessa, helped in designing that the grading rubric or the feedback. And I think that helps because they understand in that sense the language more also of how students interpret it. But there is still room for development there, and it only works, I think, if you have a hardcore like a subject with sort of very hard answers, definite answers.
Karin, do you also have experience with peer groups that work in parallel to the techniques you have been using in your course? Karin, do you hear us?
You're muted, Karin.
Karin, you're still muted, yeah.
Yes, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you repeat your question again?
Have peer groups in your set of techniques that you deployed? Do you have peer groups as well in your groups?
Because the BSL scheme was suspended, so we actually don't have the chance to practice the BSL in this semester. So for this semester, we still having online teaching. So So sorry, we don't have much experience to share on this perspective.
Yeah, okay, no, that's nice. And then there was
Yeah.
from Bob, perhaps you could repeat the question to Colleen.